Yeah.
Right? Good evening, guys. So there is a question from Hardik, and also like we are seeing a lot of openings on SAP applications, right? So Hardik is asking, having a question on that. What is SAP web application, right? So first of all, SAP stands for Systems, Application, and Products. Systems, applications, and products. Okay, and we should call it as SAP, not SAP. First thing, and then they are having both SAP web applications as well as SAP GUI applications. So when we say SAP web, right? So it is SAP, it is a web application. It is similar to our any web application like Big Basket or AOS or any of these applications. SAP web. But if they say like the application to be tested is SAP GUI, that is a desktop application, or we call it as a thick client application. Thick client application or desktop application. So to do performance testing for these applications, you require the domain knowledge, and you require domain knowledge. Okay. Now, what is meant by domain knowledge? So, what are the first thing is you need to have domain knowledge, SAP domain knowledge. First thing. Okay. And what is meant by domain? Like in interviews also they'll ask you in what all domains you are having experience. Let's say if they ask like this, right? So there are different domains like e-commerce, right? E-commerce ante your Myntra or Amazon or Flipkart, all these are e-commerce domain. These are e-commerce domain, and you have um, mm, mm,
Banking domain.
Banking domain.
uh, banking. I will put it into BFSI, and commonly that is called as BFSI. So banking, where this B stands for banking and financial services, and I for insurance domain. Okay. So you need to know when you prepare some CV, or when you are having some CV, right? You kept 3 to 4 applications in your CV. You need to know under what domain they fall into. అది ఏ డొమైన్ లో కింద పడుతుందో you have to know that. You need to know that first. Okay. So e-commerce domain అంటే like you have this Myntra, Big Basket, all these come under that e-commerce domain. All right. So Big Basket, these kind of applications are Amazon or Flipkart. Remember, these are e-commerce domain or retail domain. We can also call it as retail domain. That is e-commerce basically. Retail means, let's say for example, retail means like suppose you have Reliance retail website or DMart website. Those are all retail domain. You got it, right?
Yes,
Retail
sir.
are, I think Big Basket and these are, they can also be called as e-commerce. They also fall under e-commerce. E-commerce is a big, broader term, like to cover all these, retail applications and all this. And like you, if you are insurance domain, like you may be having banking domain applications, only banking. Okay, banking is one domain, or insurance is one domain, or telecom domain. These are the different domains. Telecom domain or separate financial services, or like again BFSI is a broader umbrella under which all these domains fall under: banking, financial services, and insurance domains.
Healthcare is one domain.
Healthcare. Yes, healthcare is another important domain. Right? These are different, domains. That we have. Our airlines domain. Airlines is a separate domain again. Right. So if you are keeping some banking project, right? If you are, or if you mention some banking project in your CV, hey, what happened? Let me. So you need to know some banking terminology. Okay. So they'll ask, what domain knowledge you are having, or what are the different domains that you worked, and why, can you tell me like what are the different domains that you worked, and what domain knowledge are you having? You got it.
Yes, sir.
So you need to know, like, first of all, what is domain? What is meant by domain, right? And I'll write it down here. Okay. It's your class notes document only, right? Yeah. And if you mention some banking project, right? You should know like what are the this is one issue that I observed. People are keeping some banking projects, and they don't know what are the different types of fund transfer. Okay, suppose you kept some US banking project, you need to know what are the different types of fund transfers in US. So in US, we have something called wire transfer. They call it as wire. So let's start with our India. Let's say you kept some local bank application. So you need to know what are the different types of fund transfers, yes or no, in India,
IMPS, NEFT.
right? So if someone is keeping banking domain, they should know this as minimum thing that is called as domain knowledge. So like in fund transfer, you have yes, IMPS, next
RTGS.
NEFT and RTGS, isn't it? Now, what is NEFT and what is RTGS? You also need to know that, right? So what is NEFT and what is the difference between NEFT and RTGS?
In the NEFT, we can able to transfer only a limited amount, like within 5 lakhs or 6 lakh. But RTGS, we can send more than crores.
Right. So NEFT is up to 2 lakhs, isn't it? But if it is, more than 2 lakhs, it will be, you need to do RTGS, RTGS transfer. That's what I know. Okay. IMPS means immediate payment service. IMPS stands for immediate payment service. NEFT means National Electronic Fund Transfer. RTGS means real-time gross settlement. So when someone keep a banking project, they should know this terminology. Makes sense, right? So, otherwise you cannot keep a banking project and you can't say that I don't know what are the different types of fund transfer, right? So if you're keeping some US project, US, in US, there are different types of fund transfer again. They don't call it as IMBS or NEFT or RTGS. So these are our terminology, right? So which Indian banks follow? Indian banks follow this terminology. But if it is a US bank, right? So you suppose, you kept some US bank project in your CV. So you should know like what are the different fund transfers, that they follow, or what is the terminology that they follow. They call it as wire transfer. Okay. Wire transfer and second. You see here wire transfer, ACH transfer. Um, in wire transfer itself, there are multiple types. International wire transfer, domestic and international wire transfer. Okay. Domestic means like within the country, or international wire transfer. So you need to know at least these two terms, like this wire transfer, the word wire transfer. You should know that, right? The US banks follow this terminology. And what is meant by mortgage? What is meant by mortgage?
Means loans.
Mortgage, yeah. Mortgage means you keep some property as a surety, and if you are taking a loan, that is called as a mortgage loan. So you need to know all this terminology. That is called as domain knowledge. Understood, guys? I know what is meant by credit, what is meant by debit, right? So these are fundamentals. These are fundamental concepts that anyone should know. What is meant by credit and what is meant by debit, right? What is mortgage? What is insurance? What is the meaning of insurance? What is the meaning of insurance, guys? If you give some insurance project, what is the meaning of insurance? Yes, guys. Hey, you know this. Most of you know this, guys.
Insurance for the items like they are taking the insurance for the like
A
homemade.
thing providing protection
Uh,
against a possible eventuality. A thing providing protection against a possible eventuality, right? So suppose if you take life insurance, right? So the life insured, the person who is insured, if unfortunately something happens to them, so their family members will get that insurance amount, right? So basically here, like there are crores of people who do insurance, but those like in case unfortunately someone loses their life insurance. I'm talking about life insurance. So their family members, will get the insurance amount as per the policy that the insured has taken, right? And health insurance, you need to know what is health insurance. So you need to. This is when you keep a healthcare domain or an insurance project. you need to know this terminology, basic terminology. Like, what is a term plan? What is an endowment plan? So if you kept some insurance project, you should know this terminology. Then only you can keep a insurance project. What is an endowment plan? What is a term plan or term insurance? Right? What is meant by term insurance, guys? Endowment plan means, so there will be maturity amount after some time. Maturity amount will be there, will be there after some time. Right? That is an endowment plan. But term plan means like, one will get that amount only when, like something happens to them. Then only they will get that amount. Okay, that is a term insurance plan. Hello. Yeah. So the conclusion from this discussion is, if you keep some projects in your CV, you should know under which domain they fall into, first of all. Whether it falls into an insurance domain or a healthcare domain or a telecom domain or a banking domain or e-commerce domain, or whether it falls under BFSI. Understood, guys? See, BFSI ante em ledu. See, for example, if you have HDFC is into banking, HDFC is into insurance, right? You have HDFC Bank, HDFC Life Insurance, Health Insurance, right? And they are into AMC also, asset management business. That is financial, that falls under financial services. Understood, guys? So HDFC Bank, they fall into banking services. They do banking, and then HDFC Home Loans, let's say, right? That falls into financial services. Or HDFC Life Insurance, again that is under insurance domain, isn't it? And they also have AMC. AMC means asset management companies. HDFC AMC. So AMC stands for asset management companies. So if you are doing a project for this HDFC group, you can call it as we are working for a BFSI domain project. If you are working on multiple applications but belonging to the same group, right? So we call it as BFSI domain. Understood, guys?
Yes, sir. Sir, and one more thing. So you are saying that SAP GUI, right? If anybody asks, have you have an experience on how to do it, the SAP GUI?
Now, SAP GUI,
Say that
it's
because we don't
always
get it.
unless until you have genuine experience on SAP GUI, so don't claim to have a experience on it.
Okay.
Because like you need to know some in SAP GUI. If you want to claim some experience on SAP GUI, you need to learn some. You need to have some domain knowledge. Like they have something called T codes, for example. T codes under transaction codes. So you need to know, you need to work or you need to spend some time on it to learn them. Otherwise, you cannot say that you worked on SAP GUI application without knowing it. And they will ask even for script recording also, they have to, the application admin has to do some settings on the application side. They will ask if you claim some experience on SAP GUI applications. They will ask what are the common challenges, what are the T codes. Can you tell me some? There are around 40 to 50 T codes. I don't know exactly, but there are tens of T codes. So they will ask, can you tell me some T codes, SAP T codes? So without having that, either you need to have genuine experience or you need to learn something about SAP GUI applications and SAP domain. So then only claim that you have experience on SAP GUI. But if it is SAP web, you don't need any domain knowledge mostly. You don't need any SAP much of domain knowledge. They expect it, but not really required, not really mandatory. Because I worked on SAP web application, but I don't have much domain knowledge. I learned whatever required in just couple of hours, and then it's like a regular web application only. Okay, I did not see any difference in SAP web application, but SAP GUI means so unless until you work on it or you have some domain knowledge, don't claim that you are having, or you cannot even if you claim, you will be cut. You will be easily cut. Okay, because there are a lot of things that they ask in SAP GUI applications. If you go for SAP, we need to know there are some there are a lot of SAP T codes. If you Google search, that won't be sufficient again. Even if you learn this lot of T codes, these SAP transaction codes, right? So that alone won't be sufficient, right? These are the basic T codes. SM38. You cannot remember actually unless until you work on it, it will be difficult to remember this. Yes or no?
Yes, correct.
Unless until you spend some time on them, you cannot remember this. So SAP domain knowledge lekunda, if you claim that you have experience, you will be easily cut. Okay.
Okay,
SAP
okay.
in any T codes unnai.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
SAP, there are 1 lakh it seems. Okay. There are 1 lakh plus T codes it seems. Of course, there will be some important T codes that we need to remember. So SAP stands for Systems, Application and Products in Data Processing. Right? I mentioned here in data processing. Okay, now what is the next topic that we thought of discussing today? Like API testing, right? I told that, I remember I told that we'll start API testing today, isn't it? Here I already opened it. All right. And also, some interviewers are asking simple programming questions or coding questions. Some interviewers, not all interviewers. Okay, I'll explain few of those. Suppose this is one common program, some basic program asked for performance engineers, right? So can you write a program, or a code to swap two numbers, to swap two numbers. Okay, this one common question asked in like in interviews. So that means what is the meaning of that? Suppose if A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20, right? So you should write a program to swap these two numbers. After running that program, A value should become 20 and B value should become 10. Understood, guys? So you can write this program, in two ways, multiple ways actually. As far as I know, there are 2 to 3 important ways. One is by using a temporary variable and without using a temporary variable. One is by using a temp variable. And another one is without using a temporary variable also you can use it. Explore this one. I leave it for you as a do it yourself exercise. There are 2 ways that you need to explore and remember. Okay. But this is one common program, like suppose if you don't know, like those who are from non-computers background and you don't know, like the code, you cannot write the code, right? At least explain pseudocode or explain the logic. Pseudocode means nothing but pseudocode or logic. That is nothing but you can explain the logic. If you cannot remember this, so if you cannot write the code, suppose you don't have any by the way, they will ask you can choose any programming language of your choice. You can use Java or Python or C++, any programming language of your choice. Suppose if you don't know any programming language, still you can handle that by explaining the logic. You can handle that by explaining the logic. Okay, they will be they will be okay, or they will be satisfied if you explain the logic. Understood, guys? So what see, for example, you have like I'll show you some simple example, okay, to explain that that logic, right? I'll tell you some simple example, okay. Suppose you have a blank workbook like this, right? Right? And suppose A value is equal to 10, B value is equal to 20, right? If you want to swap these two numbers, how do you do, guys? Can you explain the logic, or can you explain how will you do this in Excel? If you want to swap these two numbers in Excel, how can you do that? How will you do that?
We can store one value in one temporary variable.
Right. So what you can do is you can pick this value and store it into some temporary variable called C, and then you can make A is equal to B, and then you'll keep it here, right? Antegani, like you need not do like this, right? You need not see, you need not take this A and C, store it in C, and then you will not do it like this. Yes or no? And then you will not swap them. Agree? Yes or no? So
Yes.
one temporary value is see, one temporary cell is enough. Suppose if you want to swap these two numbers, So you store this 20 into some temporary variable called C, and then you make A is equal to B, and then save this value here like this, right? So this is what logic means. This is what pseudocode or logic means. Okay. So you can do this, swapping two numbers, by using a temporary variable and without using a temporary variable. Understood, guys? One is by using a temp variable, and without using a temp variable also. You can do that without using a temp variable also. Temp variable means temporary variable. But if you want to use, if you can use a temporary variable, how will you do that? See, suppose A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20, right? Then you define temp is equal to, right? You declare it, you use a temporary variable, right? And then you store, one of these values into temp is equal to A. Let's say, for example, if you said temp is equal to A. Now, after this statement, your temp value will become 10, right? Your A value will become 10 and B value will be 20. Yes or no? B value will be equal to 20 after this statement, right? What next now? Miru, you are storing that A value into temp now. Understood? Now we want to swap these two numbers. Now what you can do? Can you do like
B
this? A is
value
equal
will
to
be
B.
20 in
If
variable.
you say A is equal to B, then what happens? If you say A is equal to B, then after the executing this statement, A value will become 20, isn't it? See, A is equal to B means you are storing B value into A. That is the meaning of it. So initially B value is 20. Now if you say A is equal to B, now what happens? A value will become 20, right? Temp will have 10. In temp, 10 will be stored, right? B value will still remain 20. So you need to write the logic like this. And then what you do, so A value 20 ochindi, B value should become 10. Then what you do, you store this temp into B. As simple as that. B is equal to temp another. Then at the end of this execution, after this statement is executed, now your this A value will become 20, right? B value will become 10. Yes or no? Temp lo enta munde emundi 10 undi. Now we are storing that value into B. So B value will become 10. A value will become 20. Sorry, this is 20, right? Yes or no? A value is 20 here after executing this statement. Now those numbers are swapped, right? Both of those numbers are swapped, right? So that's it. This is if you cannot write the code, explain this logic. This is called as pseudocode. Okay, this is called as pseudocode. Understood or no? Are you with me, guys?
Yes, sir.
There is nothing difficult here. Okay, there is no rocket science here. Yes or no? Understood or no? Excel example గుర్తుంచుకోండి. Remember this Excel example. If you want to swap two numbers, right? So first you will take it from here and keep it into a temporary variable called C, and then you cut it from here and keep it here, isn't it? And then you store this value into here. The same thing I am writing step by step here. And after each statement, what would be the result? That is what this is comments, guys. This is double slash is used for comments. So after this statement, this will be the result. Am I correct or did I miss anything? Is this correct, guys?
Yes, sir.
Right? Now you can do the same thing without using a temporary variable. Here we used a temporary variable called TMP, right? Without using a temporary variable also, you can swap these two numbers. Okay. Will you explore it, or you want me to explain that?
Will do, sir.
Okay, please do that. That is simple thing. Please do that. Okay. So like I got this question in one of the interviews, guys. They asked last year I attended one interview casually. There they asked this: can you write a program to swap two numbers? Okay. So I said this one. Then he asked, can you write without using a temporary variable? So these are some common interview questions, not in just one interview. I got this, and this question in multiple interviews. Okay, so be prepared for that. Even percentage questions, they will ask percentage questions, because in performance testing, we'll see that tomorrow when we go to the report preparation, right? At that time, we will discuss, like, you'll understand why these percentage questions are important, right? And those who attended, those who met in person, those who came to the institute and are met me in person, I conducted one, like a simple assessment, right? I think I had shown you previously. Yes or no? Some simple percentage questions. That is the reason I asked that. Like you'll understand that once we go to the preparation, test preparation, right? There we will understand, how important these percentage questions are. Or, they may ask some puzzles also. Suppose you have a 2-liter scan and a 5-liter scan. You want to measure 4 liters. How can you do that? Understood? They can ask these, for aptitude questions also. Okay. So you cannot say that, why are you asking? You can't say that, you can't demand to ask only performance testing questions. Basically, they will ask these kind of questions to test your logical skills. Okay. All right. So, please explore this without using, how can we swap two numbers without using a temporary variable? Okay. All right then. So any queries? So we'll start, API testing. Okay. We start API testing today. Like it will take 2 sessions. First I need to explain web services versus web APIs first thing, as a first thing. Okay. We need to understand that web services versus web API and XML versus JSON, right? So maybe in today's concept, we'll discuss this, and tomorrow we'll see how to develop a API testing script. Okay. So it will take 2 sessions for this concept. Then I will start, I'll start distributed testing them. Our regular expressions, we'll park it aside. So, like day after tomorrow, I want to, I mean, in the next session, I want to start distributed testing. Okay. And then we'll also discuss these regular expressions, of course. And then how to prepare a report. Once we complete the distributed testing, again, we'll go to the reporting part, how to create a high level report and a detailed report. Okay. And, we'll, next week, we'll do one script on this, any of these real-time applications, any one of these, either Asmara or RO Realty or Smart Tours. I think, I did, before covering this, I did one script on this RO Realty. Okay. And I understood, I analyzed what are the challenges in that, how far it will be useful to you. So I do that kind of exercise before, covering any real-time application. I did one script, I tried one script, and, whether you can do that or, if I explain that, will it be feasible for you to understand or not? I did that first one script on that RO Realty application, and, there are some important learnings in that. So I thought I prefer to cover this one. Asmara, I already have a recorded session. If you want, I can share it. Smart tools, you can do it. Okay. Smart tools is a simple application. You can do that. Real-time application. All these 3 are real-time applications. All right. So if possible, I'll try to cover one script on RO Realty for you. Okay.
Okay.
As part of, real-time application that we are going to cover. All right. Now let's get started with this web services versus web APIs. We'll discuss theory part today, and tomorrow we'll see the scripting part. I'll update this time later on. Okay. Let's update the time later on. Now let me explain what is a web service and what is an API. Okay. So before going to that theory part or prepared material, I want to give you some examples of web services where these web services are APIs comes into picture. Okay. Suppose suppose you are using some travel application like IRCTC or MGMITTraining or something, right? MGMITTraining or like you are using some ClearTrip or any of those travel applications, or else you are using some e-commerce application like Flipkart or Amazon. And initially you will have a parent application, or you'll start with Amazon application, and now, or let's take any travel application example. I think that is the best example. So suppose you want to book a ticket on MakeMyTrip or ClearTrip, right? So you'll start with cleartrip.com or makemytrip.com. You go to that cleartrip.com or makemytrip.com, right? Cleartrip.com. You have a lot of applications, a lot of examples that you can take, isn't it? Or you can take MakeMyTrip or Exigo, right? I know one recent application called Exigo, right? So where it allows you to book flight tickets or train tickets. All the right. So now uh, if you are using any of these applications, and you first select your flight or train, whether you want to go book a flight or a bus or a train. So you'll go there, and then you search for the trains between the departure between your source and destination city, and then you enter the passenger information or traveler's informations, and then finally you will go to the payment page, isn't it? Now when you go to the payment page, right, so you will be like, there will be different gateways. You'll have SBI gateway or Axis Bank gateway or ICICI gateway. There are a lot of other gateways. Now like your request will go to some third party application there, right? So when you are making a payment, right, that application will not be developed by the Exigo.com or or MakeMyTrip company. They may be using, you may need to interact with some different gateway, which was suppose if this is a Java application, for example, I know for sure that IRCTC is a Java application. This is a Java application. Okay. Now, suppose you are trying to make a payment on this. Once you add the passenger details, select the train and, class, travel class. And once you are making payment, right, that payment gateway may be developed in a .NET application. It may not be a Java application. Yes or no? That payment gateway need not be a Java application. It need not be developed in the same programming language as IRCTC. So now what happens is your Java application should communicate with some .NET application, or your Java application should communicate with another Java application, or your Java application should communicate with another PHP application. So that is where this web services comes into picture. That is where this web services comes into picture. So web service is a language independent way of communication. So if any two different applications which are developed in same programming language or different programming language need to communicate with each other, there will be some web services, there will be some web service in between. Clear, guys? So Java, .NET and PHP applications can communicate with other applications through a web service over the network, right? So if you write some code, and now this is theory part, regular theory part. Why not write a code that could be used by any developer coding in any pro language, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? And guess what? The solution is web services. So a web service, facilitates communication between two different applications. So they can be same. Both these applications can be developed using same programming language or a different programming language. Clear, guys? But web service, a web service facilitates communication between two different applications. Is it clear, guys? What is a web service? This understand this diagram. Like you will not forget, or it will be easy for you to assimilate. Suppose a Java
Sir,
application.
how come
Yes.
the resource path and these web services, how can
How come?
we resource path, right? So when we do the resource path, when we doing any operations in our application, so we will get one resource path, right?
It's some resource path. No, wait, let me explain. So you are using the IRCTC application, and you entered the passenger details, and like it calculated the total amount, right? And now you need to make the payment of the total amount. Now let's say like that application, that payment gateway is developed using .NET programming language. Now your name or your user ID and your the ticket amount, that information should go to a .NET application. So between these Java and .NET application, there will be another software. Web service is nothing but another software application that will communicate or that will facilitate the transfer of data. And now once you make the payment on the .NET application, again, that will send an acknowledgement that the payment is done. So this communication happens, if you are using a web service, right, that communication happens in the form of, XML code. Okay. Web services use SOAP protocol. A web service uses SOAP protocol, and and it uses XML as a medium of transfer to transfer the data. Web services use XML language for storing and transporting data. right? So that storage, that transfer for storing and transporting data, we can use either web service or an API, etc. Clear, guys? Now, web service is nothing but another software program, another software program or another application, another code, software program or software code, right? But they facilitate the communication between two different applications. Okay. Now, what is WSDL? When you say web service, fine, we understood now what is a web service. Now, what is a WSDL? WSDL means WSDL stands for Web Service Description Language or Web Service Definition Language, right? So, what does that WSDL file contain? So, to facilitate this communication, right, between two different applications, there will be certain rules that define the communication. There will be certain rules that define some communication. How that communication can happen between different systems or applications, and all those rules are defined in a file called WSDL file. Those set of rules for communication between two different languages or two different applications, they will be defined in a file called WSDL file, and the file extension will be .wsdl. So that's all you need to know about web services. Okay. We need not know what is UDDI and all this. Okay. We are not developers. We don't, we are not developers, or we are not going to develop any web service, or, we are not going to write any code for API, right? So these are the fundamental concepts you need to know about web services. And web services are, are majorly of two types. First one uses SOAP, which is, outdated now. SOAP protocol is outdated now. No one is using SOAP protocol now, except legacy applications. Before 10 years or 20 years, if there is some application which was developed before 10 years or 20 years, they may be using SOAP protocol. But right now, all the modern applications are using REST APIs. So web services are majorly of two types. One is SOAP, the other one is REST, right? And when they use, when they are using SOAP protocol, right, they use XML based message exchange. Means this data transfer happens in the form of XML from one application to another application. The data transfer from one application to another application, it will be done using XML language. Okay. That is SOAP protocol. When they are using SOAP protocol, they use XML based message exchange. Okay. And whereas, if you are using, APIs, right, they use JSON. If you are using REST APIs, if your application is using REST APIs, they use JSON format for storing and transporting data. Okay. They use JSON format for storing, JSON language or JSON format for storing and transporting data. Now, here is another important interview question. What is the difference between XML and JSON? Between XML and JSON, one of the important interview questions. Okay. So what is the difference between XML and JSON? So JSON is a lightweight format. As simple as that. JSON is a lightweight format, and after JSON came into the market, XML has become outdated or extinct or obsolete. XML has become obsolete. Obsolete means outdated. XML was very popular, when I was in my first job search around 2005. Till 2010, XML was popular. But after 2010, JSON came into market. And after that, once JSON came into the market, XML has become outdated. Now we need to understand why. We need to understand why and what is the meaning of, lightweight format, right? So if you remember, we discussed this in the performance testing fundamentals. So what is the meaning of that, lightweight format? Do you remember that by any chance? No? Suppose, you want to so XML stands for extensible markup language. JSON stands for JavaScript object notation. If you want to know the full forms, these are the full forms of this. Now, what is the difference between XML and JSON? And JSON is a lightweight format for storing both XML and C. Observe here. XML was designed to store and transport data. JSON is also used for storing and transporting data. JSON is also used for storing and transporting data. However, JSON is a lightweight format. Now, what is meant by lightweight format? We need to understand what is meant by lightweight format. And now this example helps you to understand that. Suppose an application is using, for storing and using XML for storing and transporting data. This is how the code looks like. The XML code looks like, this will be the XML code for that. If you observe here, this is XML code for code for representing 3 employees first name and last name. Okay, you have an employees tag, th tag, and then inside that you have an employee tag, inside that you have first name tag. This is opening tag, this is closing tag. Again, this is opening tag of last name, this is closing tag of last name, right? And then this is the closing tag of employee, right? So if if 3 employees data should be transferred in the form by using XML, this is how the code looks like. This, now if you see the number of characters over here, okay, if you see how many characters are there in this, like XML code. So I'll go to charactercountonline.com and you can type that, those characters over here. And if you see here, there are 286 characters when you are using XML. If your application is using XML, right? And it want to transfer some 3 employees data from one application to another application. So it involves 286 characters, or it need to transfer 286 characters over the network if your application is using XML. But if the application is using JSON, right? If your application is using JSON, if you see, remember this number, XML. If any application is using XML for storing and transporting data of 3 employees, first name and last name, it involves transferring of 286 characters. But if the same data can be transferred in 146 characters if you are using JSON format, yes or no? So this is almost half of that XML code, right? See, this is 146 and that is 286, almost half. Yes or no, guys?
Yes, sir.
So this is the meaning of lightweight format, or this is actually what lightweight format means. JSON is a lightweight format because it consumes less data transfer, or less number of bytes transfer is required if your application is using JSON, and that is the actual meaning of lightweight format. So this is what lightweight format means. Same data, the same data, first name and last name of 3 employees are going here as well as here, right? But if the application is using JSON, it involves very less number of characters. It will be 50% of XML code. And this is the meaning, now what happens, if the number of characters to be transferred is half, right? Your network utilization will be less, right? Your network bandwidth utilization will be less, right? Yes or no? So that is why, all modern web mobile apps, particularly mobile apps, use only JSON. They don't use XML. Your Facebook or, or your Instagram or any mobile app, you take any mobile app, IRCTC mobile app, or like Twitter, all of these mobile apps use, like JSON for storing and transporting data. Okay. So, and that is why after JSON came into the market, XML has become outdated or obsolete. Clear, guys? So if someone asks like, what is the difference between XML and JSON? This is how you need to transfer. Can you define? This is how you need to define. Can someone define it? Can someone explain what is the difference between XML and JSON now? Manisha, do you have Manisha today? Okay, Manisha, we don't have. Sirisha, what is the difference between XML and JSON? Sirisha?
Yeah.
So if someone asks, if you face this question in the interview, what is the difference between XML and JSON? How do you answer that?
Sir, front-end validation will use that.
Front-end validation? No. That is something completely different from what I explained just now. Is it correct, XML and JSON are used for front-end validation? I don't know. Like, I don't think so. Please correct me if I am wrong. Anyone else?
No, actually, XML basically we can use for data transferring. Like when we send the request, right? On that time we can use it XML, and we are saying we are sending the data. For that one, in the SOAP we are using XML. Same thing in the recently for the rest we are using a JSON to send the payload. On that time we
Right.
are using a JSON.
Right. So I don't know, like, can we ask, like, wait, let me ask someone else, Rajni. So can you define, or can you How will you answer this question if you get the same question in the interview? How would you answer this?
XML and all uses uh, like tags and all, but JSON doesn't use a tag. And format is bit easy compared to XML.
Okay. So let me explain. Both XML and JSON are designed, or they are meant for storing and transporting data. Right? So however, transporting data means from where to where, from one application to another application. Okay. Transporting data means from one application to another application. Now, but main difference between them is, however, JSON is lightweight format. That's it. This would be a perfect explanation.
So
Right?
transferring data from one application to another application, or like client to server.
It can be client to server also. Now, good question. It can be from see, for example, if you are using a mobile app and you are checking weather details, and you should get the weather details from the server, right? So JSON, that will be transferred in the form of JSON format, or your app will be using JSON format. Your server will be sending the response in JSON format, and your mobile app will receive it and it will display the information.
So it need not to be always JSON. So if the developer will design that one in JSON, then it will be JSON, right? Or else it could be HTML or CSS.
There is no rule
JavaScript.
that yes, you are correct. So there is no rule that it should be sent only in JSON. But most of the mobile apps use this JSON format nowadays.
Okay.
The same amount of information can be transferred in less number of bytes if they use JSON. So they use JSON. The developers use JSON. Unless until it is a legacy application, legacy app. And by the way, I hope everyone knows what is the difference between application and an app, or where these two terms are used. So application means web application. Usually, the word application is used for mobile web applications, and app is used for mobile applications. Yes or no? Mobile apps, and we don't call it as mobile application. We usually call it as mobile apps. But a web application is referred as an application. So this is the difference between application and an app. Okay. See, app is a short form of application only. Understood, guys? App is nothing but a short form of application only. But the word application is used for web applications, whereas the word app is used for mobile applications or mobile apps. Clear now? Right? And when you say data transfer, it need not be, like it can be from server to client also, client to server and server to client also. Right? But both XML and JSON are designed for storing and transporting data. However, JSON is a lightweight format. So this is the preferred choice. JSON is a preferred choice particularly for is the preferred choice for mobile apps particularly, right? Very important entry question, guys, in the web services. Okay, web services and API testing. This is one of the important entry questions, important concept. Okay.
So REST APIs will transfer data only in JSON format, or
What is
use
it?
both?
What is it?
So REST APIs will transfer the data in only JSON.
They support like other formats also. Okay. See, SOAP supports only XML, right? But whereas if you go to REST APIs, they support XML, they support JSON, they support text or HTML. They support all the formats. But usually, like REST is so popular because of JSON only. So this would be the preferred choice. That is what I mentioned here. So this JSON is the preferred choice for mobile applications, or because they consume less bandwidth here. If they are using JSON, they consume less bandwidth. But this REST APIs support all formats, all these 4 formats: XML, JSON, text, and HTML.
Okay.
Okay. And try to remember or understand only the highlighted statements. Okay. So REST all statements are not required for you. We are not developers to go in depth and like understand all the internal details. In depth we need not understand. But whatever is highlighted in bold, try to understand that and try to assimilate that. Yes. Someone is asking something.
Yeah. So actually, is there any difference between REST API and REST Assured, or both are same?
REST API and REST Assured. REST Assured is a tool, I think. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Okay, because
I think REST Assured is a tool name. REST Assured, no? What is REST Assured? Ah, REST Assured is you can okay. REST Assured, sorry guys, it is not a tool, but you can be certain or you can feel confident about something. It seems that is the actual meaning of REST Assured. Is REST Assured may also refers to a tool for testing APIs. Yes, REST Assured is a tool for doing API testing. I am correct.
like Postman.
Like Postman. Yes.
Oh.
I didn't get a chance. I don't know. I just heard the term. That's it. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to the next one. Right. Now let us understand what is API. Right. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. I'll give some simple example. Again, API is also a software. It is a software or it is some program with that allows two applications to talk to each other. API is the software intermediary that allows two applications to talk to each other. Okay. So API stands for Application Programming Interface, and API is the software intermediary. Means it is a software application which acts as a mediator. And it allows two applications to talk to each other. Okay, I'll give you some example for this APIs. Okay, suppose you are using IRCTC application. Let's say you are using IRCTC application, and your IRCTC application will have its own web server, app server, DB server. Yes or no? Your IRCTC application will have its own web server, app server, DB server. The web server that IRCTC uses is Nginx. I think we discussed that previously also in server-side monitoring slides when we are going through server-side monitoring. I remember that we discussed it, right? So Nginx is a web server, and IRCTC uses Nginx as their web server. Okay, this one. IRCTC application uses you can see here. I mentioned it here. IRCTC, Big Basket, HDFC, these all use Nginx as their web server. Now IRCTC application will also have some application server as well, but we don't know what exactly is that application server. ఈ Nginx నాకు ఎలా తెలిసిందంటే when I was accessing IRCTC on some day, I got an error message and it is showing that Nginx అని చూపిస్తుంది. It had shown that the server is Nginx. That is how I know that IRCTC is using Nginx. I should be having that screenshot as well, but it should be like there are a lot of screenshots that I am having, so it's buried out somewhere in this. Okay, there are hundreds of screenshots. I need to search for that. Where exactly is that? But but I know that I observed that when I got some error message from IRCTC, it is showing Nginx name. Okay, now if you take IRCTC application, they have their own web server, they have their own apps application server, and they have their own database server. And all the trains details, all the ticket availability, all those details will be stored in IRCTC database server, right? If you are using IRCTC, or if you are using APS-RTC application, for example, APS-RTC or TS-RTC application or KS-RTC, whatever it is. So these are all their own applications, right? APS-RTC is the travel application for AP State Road Transport Corporation, isn't it? So similarly, KSRTC is the like online application for the Karnataka State Transport Corporation, right? Now APSRTC will have their own web server, app server, DB server, and KSRTC will have their own web server, app server, DB servers, right? That everyone knows that, or everyone agrees with that. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? But what if you are using a travel aggregator like Redbus? Suppose you are using a travel aggregator like Redbus. Okay. Do they have their own buses? First of all, does Redbus have their own buses?
No.
No, they don't have even a single bus of their own, right? But they have tie-ups with different operators like APSRTC, Orange Travels, or TSRTC, Kerala Road Transport Corporation, and all this, isn't it? Now, when you search for buses between, let's say you search for buses between Hyderabad to, let's say, Bangalore. Okay. And now you search for buses, right? Suppose if you search on APS RTC, it will go to your APS RTC web server and then app server and then DB server. Agree? Suppose you are searching for buses between Hyderabad to Bangalore, sorry, APS RTC kada, like I will give Vijayawada to Bangalore, let's say. Okay. They may not be having from Hyderabad, right? So if you search for buses between Vijayawada to Bangalore, let's say, and you will click on check availability, your request will go to APS RTC web server, app server, and DB server, and it will get all this data. Yes, sir. Or if you are using KSRTC, if you are searching for buses on KSRTC application, your request will go to KSRTC web server, app server, DB server, right? Or if you are using IRCTC and you are searching for trains between Hyderabad to Bangalore, isn't it? And if you click on search, your request will go to your IRCTC web server, app server, DB server. Agree so far? Everyone clear on this so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, suppose you are searching for buses between two cities on Red Bus application, or you are searching for train tickets between two cities on Red Bus application, right? They will not have. They don't. First of all, they don't have their own buses, so definitely they will not have their own application. They will not have their web server, app server, DB server. There is no point. They will not. They need not store any data with them, isn't it? What they do is they have tie-ups with different travel operators like this. And when you search for buses between two cities, your request will go to all the endpoint URLs of APSRTC, TSRTC, and Orange Travels, or there are a lot of private travels, right? Jing Bus, or like a Flex Bus, or Rajesh Transport, Intercity Smart Bus. So they have their own. They will have their own servers. For example, Intercity Smart Bus will have their own application, and Intercity Smart Bus, they have their own buses. Okay, you can see that over here. Intercity, for example, Intercity Smart Bus and searches around. This is their website. So they have their own web server, they have their own application server and database server in which they store all the data. But if you are using any travel aggregators, these are called as travel aggregators. Redbus, ClearTrip, MakeMyTrip. These are called as travel aggregators. If you are searching for ticket availability between two cities, right? Your request, your search request will go to that request will go to the APS of APS RTC and KSRTC and this is smart intercity smart bus, etc. Your search request will go to their APIs, the individual travels operators which are having tie-ups with the Redbus, and then they get response from the APIs. Antegani, like Redbus will not have direct access to the intercity smart bus database, right? Obviously, they will not provide access to their database case to show the ticket availability. Yes or no? But what does all these individual travel operators do this? They expose their APIs to anyone, to public. And this Redbus and ClearTrip, MakeMyTrip, these applications send a request to those APIs and they will get the data. And that is how we are seeing finally this data on the Redbus application. That is how we get this, what is the departure time, what is the ticket rate, how many tickets are available. All this information will be fetched from the APIs. A request will be sent to the private, all the operators which are having tie-ups with this Redbus. And that APIs will respond to the the request. And that is how we get this information. How many seats are available, how many are window seats, how many total seats are available, and all this information. And what is the ticket cost and all this. So without our knowledge, we are using APIs a lot. Yes or no? Knowingly or unknowingly, you are using a lot of APIs. So not only in this case, suppose you are using Facebook application on your mobile app. You are using a Facebook app on your mobile, or you are using Instagram app on your mobile. So you are actually using APIs. You are actually using APIs, and the means of transportation will be REST APIs or JSON. The means of your data will be transferred in the form of JSON. Okay, whether you are using Amazon app, or we are using Flipkart app on your mobile, or you are using weather API, or weather application, or you are using like Instagram app on your mobile. You are actually using an API, REST API, and REST APIs use JSON for storing and transporting data. I'll take a pause here. Any queries? You understood now, so these APIs facilitate the communication between two different applications, or it facilitates communication between client and the server.
Sir, what exactly the difference between the API and web services, sir?
Web services use XML and APIs, REST APIs use JSON. That is the main difference. See, suppose you are using Redbus. Let's assume that you are using Redbus app on your mobile. Okay. And you searched for buses between two cities. And now it will fetch all the details from APSRTC, KSRTC, or Orange Travels, or like Kaleswari Travels, or whatever it is. Orange Travels or Morningstar Travels and all this. So your APIs, in between there will be some APIs, are to facilitate this communication between two different applications, you will have APIs there as well. మీ రిక్వెస్ట్ మొబైల్ నుంచి రెడ్ బస్ అప్లికేషన్ వెళ్ళడానికి ఏపీఎస్ వాడుతుంది. Again, to facilitate, to fetch the data from different travel operators also, they use APIs. Right? So each time you use an app like Facebook, send an instant message or check weather details on your phone, you are actually using an API. So what is an API? It is a particular set of rules that software programs can follow to communicate with each other. Okay. Just like web service, web service is nothing but visual file is nothing but the rules are for communication are stored in a file called visual file, isn't it? Similarly, like API is also a particular set of rules and specifications that software programs can follow to communicate with each other. So APIs serve as an interface between different software programs and facilitate their interaction. Right? And they facilitate the APIs basically serves as an interface between different software programs and facilitate their interaction. Is it clear or no?
Pawan, both are interfaces only, but web
Yes.
services uses XML and API uses JSON. That's it, right?
Yes. Perfect.
Comes to response time also, for the web services, we have higher response time, and in API, we have a less response time. Is it right?
Right. Response time will be less because they are lightweight. JSON is lightweight format. Right. Because JSON is lightweight format, response times will be lower for when the application is using JSON or REST APIs.
Okay.
Sir,
And
like
again, web
when we
services are
send
nothing but SOAP APIs, right?
No, SOAP APIs, we don't call it as SOAP APIs. We call it as SOAP. They use SOAP protocol, and internally they use, like underlying, is the XML is the underlying language used by the SOAP protocol.
Okay.
We don't call it as SOAP API. We use the word API for REST actually. We call it as REST API, but not SOAP API. SOAP web service. SOAP is a web service. So, and see, the purpose is same. Both can be called as web services only. Web services are of two types, majorly of two types, SOAP and REST. See, this REST API, REST also falls under, web service only. Because, what is the purpose of web service? It facilitates communication between, it acts as an interface between two different applications or two different applications, basically. Right? So, web services are of two types, SOAP and REST. The only difference is SOAP uses XML and REST uses JSON. That is the main difference. Okay. And of course, REST supports, different formats also, as we discussed. REST supports all formats like XML, JSON, text, and HTML. But still, they use, most of the applications which are using REST APIs, they use JSON format only. Okay. And clear, guys, or any queries, any ambiguity or any confusion?
Sir, when we send the request right to the server, so usually we will see that main request and sub request. In the same way, can we see this? What are all the APIs it is triggering?
No. Your request, may not be going in a JSON format or API. So your request will go as it is, but you'll get a response when you are getting response from the server. You may be getting either in XML or JSON. Okay, we'll see some examples. I'll show you some, like 1 second. Just give me a moment. I should be having some weather map API. So I'll show that, suppose this is a weather map. This is a, 1 second. This is a weather map API to get the weather details in a particular city. Here I am passing the city over here, London, UK. And app ID means that application ID. Okay. And now suppose you are, this is an API endpoint URL. This is called as an API endpoint URL. Suppose if you observe here, you send that request in a browser, okay, you are getting some response, and if you see here, this response is JSON format. You see here, JSON anangane, JSON format consists of that curly brackets and square brackets. If you remember this example, let me go to that performance testing fundamentals example. So if you see here, JSON uses curly brackets and square brackets, whereas XML uses this angle bracket. That is a it is a thumb rule, or that is a thumb rule or konda. If you are seeing angle bracket, that is XML. If you are seeing curly bracket, that is JSON. Curly bracket and square brackets, that is JSON. Okay. So you got some response. Now you got some response from that API, weather map API, in JSON format, and this is the response from that. These are the weather details. This is how the climate is. Light rain, it seems, now in London. Okay, London, UK. We are passing the city over here, and and other details, latitude, longitude, and all those details, like how is the temperature minimum, how is the temperature maximum, air pressure, humidity, sea level, ground level. There are a lot of weather details over here, and what is the sunset time and sunrise time, etc. And observe here, sunrise, you see some 10-digit number. How many digits is this? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So what is this 10-digit number?
Unix epoch time in
Right,
seconds.
that is epoch time. That is again epoch time. Okay, epoch time can be 10 digits or 13 digit. If it is 10 digit, means that is in seconds. That represents time in date and time in seconds. You can copy it. You can copy that the 10-digit number, and you can go to Unix epoch time and you can confirm that. Unix epoch converter. And if you enter that value, the 10-digit number over here, and if you convert the timestamp to human date, it shows you the time in seconds, still seconds, date and time. So today is December 5th, 1:19 p.m. 1:19 p.m. GMT plus 5:30. Hey, what is this? Your time zone, it is showing 1:19 p.m. Okay. These are the details at 1:19. Why is it? But why is it showing details at 1? Okay, sorry. This is sunrise time. Sorry, this is sunrise time. So this is the time at which sunrise happened in London. That's what it means. And so basically that is not important, But when you see this number starting with 17, that understand that you should remember that Unix epoch time immediately. So if it is a 10-digit number, it shows the date and time in seconds, up to seconds. But if it is a 13-digit number, let's say, for example, if you have some number like this, 13-digit number like this represents date and time in milliseconds. You see here, now you got milliseconds as well. You see here, timestamp is in milliseconds. But if it is 10-digit number, it shows the time in seconds. You see here, it is highlighted here, seconds, isn't it? Clear, guys? So, it is showing the sunrise time, sunset time in London, and, pressure and humidity and all these details, visibility, fog, and all these details. Clear, guys? So, this is we call this as API endpoint URL. We don't call it as a, what we call that? We don't simply call it as a URL, but if it is an API, we call it as API endpoint URL. Please remember this term, API endpoint URL. Okay, we don't call it as a web URL, but we call it as a API endpoint URL if it is an API call. Basically, this is a REST API call, and this is the response that we got from that REST API.
Or how can we differentiate? How can we identify so whether it is even though in the web request size, so the request will be looks like the same thing, right? So resource path will be there.
No, API mostly you will have this word API. Usually, like most, you'll have this API in the API endpoint URL. You'll have that word called API, and you came across that in some of our applications also.
Yeah,
if you remember, like AOS application.
We done the AOS application in that.
In AOS application, you have web services as well as APIs. Let me open that now. Now it makes sense to open that, and explain that, right? So September 2024 batch, if you remember, we did some scripts on AOS application for user registration, if you remember, right? And if you open that script, okay, let me open one of those, let me double click and open that. So this script consists of, that communication consists of both, That application sends response. It is made up of both web service and APIs. I'll show that. Let the script open, script be open. I'll show like this script consists of both web services and APIs as well. This user registration script, if I remember it correctly. So if you see here, when you fill and submit the form, right? See, observe here, this is a web service. Web service is, I think they use these two letters called WS. If it is a web service, and you also have an API call. An API will consist of this three letters API. That is the only way to identify like whether it is a web service
Based
or
on
a
the request only,
API, or
we can
like you can
identify.
identify easily.
So based on the request only, we can identify.
Yes.
That's it.
What
Yes.
is there for web service, sir? I just disconnected. Sorry.
WS. You know,
Okay.
they usually they'll use as WS.
Okay.
WS is the short form of web service, right? So AOS application is using both web services and APIs. And if you see here, web service, when it is a web service call, it send the response, or you got the server response, in XML format, isn't it? But if it is an API call, you will get response in JSON format. Let me show you that. If you go to that, let me load that XML file, and if you see the API response, if you see the API, okay, what is that API number 79, isn't it? So if you see that, so go to that request number 79, and if you see the response data, so you can see here it is consisting of this square bracket and curly bracket. And if you see the response headers, there you'll see that the content type is application or JSON. You see here the content type is JSON here, isn't it? But if you see a web service call, right, the content type, you see the content type is text or XML. But you can see that in the response headers, what type of to confirm what type of response is that, isn't it? Here it clearly shows that response headers clearly show that the content type is JSON here, where when it uses an API, REST API. But whereas if it is a web service, like the content type is text or XML. Means the response comes in the form of XML format here, and this is the response that we got. And XML response consists of this angle brackets. Clear, guys? So you should be able to answer this any interview questions on this concept very confidently. Okay. REST APIs are very important. Of course, you may not get these web services now are SOAP protocol, or this XML content. You may not see that in modern applications, but all the modern applications are using JSON format. Clear, guys?
Yeah, Pawan. Other than XML and JSON, are there any other interface languages?
HTML. That's what we discussed now here, right? Just now.
Okay.
So your
HTML.
REST is this. Wait. So just now, Sukesh asked, and see, REST supports all these formats. It can send the response in XML or JSON or text or HTML, but JSON is the preferred one. Okay.
Okay.
It
But in web
supports on the
services,
REST
only
APIs,
XML will be there, right?
but SOAP it uses XML. Yes. SOAP protocol, if the application if it is a web services application and using SOAP protocol, it can use only XML for storing and transporting data. Okay. So what is the time now? 9 o'clock. So shall we stop it here? We'll stop it here for today. Please go through the recorded session, but you should have a clarity and confidence on all these concepts, guys. Very important thing. API testing is very important thing. Some projects, in some projects, they do only API testing. They may not be doing GUI testing. Okay. In some projects, they do only GUI testing, but ideally you have to do both GUI as well as API testing. In any project, ideally, you need to do both GUI testing. If you are doing performance testing, right? So you should do both GUI testing as well as API testing. Okay. Clear, guys? So first, developers develop the APIs first. First, the developers develop the APIs, and the front end team will use that APIs, and they will develop the GUI. The application GUI will be developed by using some APIs. So API testing, as soon as a developer develops some new APIs, they will ask you to do performance testing. Before the UI developed itself, before the UI is developed itself, as soon as API developers develop some APIs, REST APIs, they will ask you to to do the API testing. Okay, and the same advantage online application. So I will cover one script on. I'll do one session on how to develop a API testing script from scratch. So if you go to Advantage Online Shopping application, go to iOS versions of Management Console. I forgot it. iOS versions, this one, right? So here, if you go there, all the APIs used by this Advantage Online Shopping application are, these are all available for a public usage. If you click on this REST link, right, you'll get the complete information of all the APIs used by this Advantage Online Shopping application. For example, there is one API for user registration. This is the API for user registration. This is the API for logout. This is the API for login. You got it, guys? Now some developers develop the APIs first, and they will ask you to start your API testing. Can you do performance testing for these APIs? Right? So you need to develop the API testing script first.
So
And
sorry
then,
for interrupt.
what is it?
So sorry for interrupt. And sir, is this Swagger documentation?
Swagger's documentation. Yes,
Sir,
this is Swagger.
in every application, we will get a Swagger documentation for a testing purpose.
Yes, Swagger is the most widely used tool for storing all these REST APIs.
Is it open source?
It's open source. Yes, I
Okay.
think it is open source. So
Okay.
Swagger. Okay, Swagger is a tool or for storing all your API documentation. Swagger is a popular tool used by most of the companies. Swagger is a popular tool for storing all the API documentation.
If the developer
related to their project. All API documentation means which is related to their project.
Okay. Sir, if
API, wait, let me complete. So API documentation, what is meant by API documentation? What is the endpoint URL? What is the request method? If you see here, so it is telling you what is the endpoint URL. This is the endpoint URL. And what is the request method? It is a post method. Or this one is a get method. Health check is a get method. So and what is the request data? If you want to create an account on iOS application, what data we need to send it to the application, right? Right, we will have one separate session on this, this API doc. This Swagger and how do we create a API testing script from scratch. Okay, we'll have one separate session on this. One complete session will be on this, this part. But not now, but after in the coming up sessions, we'll have it. So all these APIs, iOS application, Advantage Online Shopping application has exposed all their APIs for account service, MasterCard, order, placing an order, catalog, and all these modules. If you assume that these are microservices, catalog is one microservice, order is one microservice. These are different web microservices. Account service is one microservice, and account service is using what all APIs that it is using. These are the APIs that related to account service. You have some 8 to 10, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Health check is 5, 6, 7, 8. You have some 8 APIs used by account service. Similarly, payment service, payment microservice is using 2 APIs. Order microservice is using some 7 to 8, not 7 to 8, around 15 to 15, API endpoint APIs, REST APIs. Got it? So these are all available for public usage. Anyone can use it, and see, if you want to create an account on iOS, if you want to create a user account on iOS, one way is you can use their UI or GUI, and you can see, we did one script on this, isn't it? We clicked on that user icon and went to create new account, and we entered all the details, and once you submit the form, account will be created. This is one way using GUI. You can create an account without using GUI also, the application GUI also. So that is the beauty of this. So APIs. If you go to account service, let's say, if you go to account service, let me collapse this. If you go to account service, there is an API endpoint URL for creating a new user account. And now using this REST API, you can create an account without using the application GUI. Okay, I'll show that tomorrow's session. Most probably in tomorrow's session, we'll see that. Okay. So I'll stop it here for today and we'll continue tomorrow, guys.
So
Yes.
just a question. So I'm not able to assimilate like what is the difference between HTTP request and this API? So both are doing the same things, right?
Yeah, both are doing
So,
the same thing, right?
but what is the difference? So if the HTML request getting the response in HTML, right? Then this is getting the JSON. That is a difference. That is the only difference. Or
that is a difference. So basically, your HTML request goes to your application, your web application. Okay. Here, your API calls go to the. Wait, I'll give you some. Let me show you one, diagram or one picture, which helps you to understand the difference. So when you are doing API testing or when you are sending a API request, it will directly go to your application server or business layer. Whereas if you are sending a HTTP request, it will go to the web server first. That is another difference. When you are doing GUI testing, right, your request goes to the web server first, and then it goes to business layer and then database layer if required. But if you are doing API testing or if you are sending a request to REST API, it will directly go to the application server. It will not touch the web server. It will go to directly to the business layer or application server.
okay.
Okay, and like only the response content differs. If you are sending a HTML request, right, you will get a response in HTML. If you are sending a API request, if you are sending a request to a REST API, you will get the response in JSON.
Okay. The mode of communication will be different.
Yes.
Sir, yesterday I tried to set up that one, sir, like Grafana. So
Okay.
I'm not able to do that simple query and under the sample query, and we will do the simple query, right? So we need to apply that one. I'm not able to create that template. Can I
You are
share
not
my screen?
getting that query, that simple query.
Yeah, at the top you have apply button, right? So after you are entering the thing, you used to do click
Now,
on
did you
apply.
watch
But
the recorded session? I had uploaded the recorded session. Please
yeah,
watch it
yeah,
and try it once.
I watched it, sir. For me, that apply button itself is not available in that
Okay. Can we see that
Grafana
tomorrow?
dashboard.
Yeah. Can we see that
Okay, sir.
tomorrow? It's already late for me.
Okay,
Let's see
okay,
that
okay.
tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. It's already 9:15. Okay. All right, yes. So we'll stop it here for today and we'll continue tomorrow. Okay. So tomorrow we'll see like API testing script. We'll develop an API testing script. All right. I will discuss more on API testing. What is API testing? We'll discuss what is an API, what is API testing, and then this part is already covered. This is nothing but red bus example that I explained today. Okay. So I documented this. So this part is already covered. So tomorrow we'll start like what is API testing? When we are doing API testing, what are the data points that we need to focus? We need to focus on what is the response time of the API, how accurate the data is, what are the status codes, and authorization checks. Right. So we'll focus on these mostly, like when you are doing API testing. And we'll discuss like what is the main difference, or if someone asks you uh, what is the difference between GUI testing and API testing, right? So I think this is a wonderful diagram for which explains the difference. So when you are doing GUI testing, your request will go to the presentation layer or web server. Whereas when you are doing API testing, right, or when you are sending a request to the API, it will be running on your application server, and request goes to that business layer or application server, right? So this is one wonderful diagram, or you have a couple of other images also, but I felt like this is really good. Okay. And then first we'll discuss this weather map API, and then we'll go to AOS application and I'll explain how to use these APIs, different APIs. I will not be able to cover all this, but I will cover 2 to 3 endpoint URLs, like, account create request, login request, logout request. I will cover of all these APIs, I will cover this account create request API, login request, and logout request. Okay, we'll see that tomorrow.